Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Rouge Rugby podcast, where we talk about real Canadian rugby. I'm Stu Hardy, joined by Jeff Robinson. Jeff, we have had the second game in the Canadian Men's European Tour. This was the game we always kind of knew how it was going to go. Ultimately, Georgia, they're currently 11th in the world rankings. Canada is 24th. Um, you know, It was actually pointed out to me earlier in the week that every opponent Canada has faced this year has been a higher ranked opponent,
Hmm.
which is I don't I don't know if that indicates the level of competition that Canada is expected to face. Obviously, they have been gearing up to qualify for the Men's World Cup earlier this year, and now that they're in, they are one of the lowest ranked teams. I think only Hong Kong, China is lower than them. So technically, they should be getting used to facing tougher opposition as they go. But at the same time, it's also a detriment to how far Canada have fallen from those halcyon days of 2011 when they were looking at 11th in the world. And yeah, well, let's not focus too much on the past. Let's focus on the very recent past. Maybe this Saturday, to be exact. Um, I think this was on the whole, a damage aversion kind of game. This was limiting the amount that could be scored. We've seen over this autumn, that higher ranked opposition can absolutely decimate lower ranked teams. So, I mean, just look at Scotland versus the USA. And, I was gearing up for this to be something similar, maybe something around like Georgia scoring 50 points on Canada and stuff. Because, Georgia is a very good team and they've played a lot of tier one opposition recently and they've done admirably against them. And then obviously we know they dominate the Rugby Europe Championship every single year. So when it was only 38, which, it's still closer to 50 than I like, but 38-17 at full time, I thought that was a pretty decent showing from the Canadian men against this kind of opposition. Uh, I'll ask if you watched the game. I know it was a very early start for the Mountain Time to be watching that.
I watched the first half, then I ironically fell asleep due to the time, and I saw about the last 10 minutes of the second half.
Mm,
Hmm.
yeah, I can fully understand. I tried to get up at 7 and but obviously being a Saturday, by the time I rolled over, it was already half time, which is, that's on me. I should have set an alarm earlier. Um, And when it was, I think it was like 17-3 at halftime to Georgia, I was like, well, this is what we kind of expected. But I'm glad I was able to get up and watch the remainder of that game. I think it was, we still have the same issues that we've seen in the game against Romania, like discipline has been a major issue. There were still yellow cards for Canada when it seemed to be more of a state of repeated infringement accumulation as opposed to a direct yellow or anything to go to the bunker system, which is, six and one, half a dozen the other. It's not a specific yellow, but it's still, you're down a player for 10 minutes and you're already, a significant point deficit to your opponent. It's something you don't need, and you just need to tighten it up and get focused on what you should actually be doing. Um, that said, I think we had a few flashes of Canadian brilliance show through. I think the build up to Brock Gallagher's try was exceptional. And then we also had Sean Parry, who irritatingly got that yellow card in the 63rd minute, but was able to make amends come the end of the game. And actually, I want to repeat something that Douglas Edward, 84 on X, when he replied to our post following the conclusion of the game, he said, "This team is looking so much better since Meehan took over, at least. It now fights to the end again and does have very good moments. Some light in the tunnel now for once."
I would agree that one positive we could say about this year so far, considering we've only had one victory, is there is an atmosphere around the team which is a lot more positive.
Mm. Yeah,
Uh,
I absolutely agree with that. I think that first of all, beating the USA is always morale boosting action for Canadian teams, regardless of sport. But I think it is the monkeys off the back,
mhm.
the issues from 2021 have now been laid to rest in the sense of this is a team that can qualify for the Men's Rugby World Cup again. And I think that now, with the focus being, hey, we need to get more guys having more experience of international level, that's come to the forefront. So a lot of these guys are relatively young, only in their 20s, getting their first caps, getting their first taste of international rugby that is outside of the PNC or games within Canada. So I think that's doing wonders for them. And it's also like just going on tour, you get the camaraderie with your teammates as well. And yeah, it just feels like things are all coming together for this young Canadian team. And understandably, it's going to take some time for this to translate onto the pitch, especially if every single your opponent you play is ranked higher than you. So that's always going to be a struggle. But I think overall, this game has been a good indicator that things, aren't there yet, but they are getting there. But is there anything that stood out from this game for you, Jeff?
Well, a couple things. Well, one, like you already touched on, the score line. I would like to have been closer, but it doesn't upset me. I thought we could get over, or Georgia could get over 50 points. Interestingly, Canada seemed to have won the territory and the possession battle, both at about 60%, which I thought was
Mm,
interesting. I spoke about this last week. Well, actually, yeah. Well, I'll go on the positives first. They won 90% of their lineouts, which is always great to see.
hmm
Restarts received, they're 100%. Passes of over 100 more than Georgia, which is both good and bad. I mean, it's great to have that much more possession and passing, but one reason why they had so many more passes is sadly they only had four line breaks too against Georgia's 10. Turnovers still too high, but Georgia shockingly had high turnover loss too, but they doubled Canada in the turnover one. Now
mm.
the real negatives, oh, the last positive, Canada actually had less penalties than Georgia did, but
Yeah.
Georgia had three yellow cards. And Canada's now going to the negative. Their tackle completion was 72%, which is just too low. And I spoke about this one last week, and uh, it goes to something I just hope they can figure out. And if they do, this will go a long way to helping Canada move up their rankings. But their scrum success was 25% in
Mm.
this game. Now I know Georgia, especially for the tier two countries, is probably has the best scrum. And they probably learned a lot from that. And sometimes you have to, was it fall before you can walk?
Yeah.
But that's something where they got to get that up. They got to get that higher. 25% is just not good. Uh, so that to me is what really stands out. And if Canada can just get a workable scrum where they can win their own ball and not give away penalties defensively,
Mm.
it'll go a long way to helping Canada move up the rankings. And actually, I'll respond to you with this with a question. Which would you rather have? A dominant lineout with a poor scrum or a dominant scrum with a poor lineout.
Hmm, that is a good question
Yeah.
because I also equate dominant scrums with dominant mauls as well.
Mhm.
So if you have the power to push back another team in your scrum, you probably have the power to push them back in a maul, especially a driving maul.
Yeah.
Um,
Which is
However,
probably
if you can't get that line out to work, then your dominant driving maul is then handicapped as a result.
well, Canada has
So,
their 90% line out, and I think they've had a good lineup almost all this year, and they also
mm,
can't really get a maul going either. So your point about the dominant scrum, dominant maul is an excellent one.
yeah. So I think at the moment it is Canada are in the position of great line out, poor scrum. The scrum work will definitely need addressing, and but if they can improve that scrum, if they can get that down. Now I do know that a lot of Canadian players aren't available, either due to other commitments or injury, and so we have a number of our forwards not available for this tour. So I can understand that, the scrum isn't as strong if you don't have like your first choice front row available for you.
Or box.
That said, you can only play with who you've got. You can only play against who's there. And, more experience will obviously improve all these things down the line. So yeah, it's one of these uncomfortable positions to be in that you want to do well, but at the same time you have to, as you say, fall before you can walk.
Yeah.
So
And I'm
uh,
hoping this will be a great learning tour for the guys. And as you said,
yeah,
a good bonding experience. Keep the atmosphere positive.
mm,
Next year, hopefully more reinforcements and the squad is deeper and stronger.
yeah. Apparently, so I found this out as well, is that the team was meant to be flying from Bucharest to Georgia, I believe, like Tbilisi. And that flight got cancelled. So last minute they were put on a flight to Istanbul, stayed the night in Istanbul, then flew into to Tbilisi, and then had to get the coach from Tbilisi to um, Batumi, and that is a 5 to 6 hour journey. So they didn't actually arrive in Batumi and get ready until Tuesday night, I believe. So they were delayed. I don't think much additional prep time would have, significantly altered the overall match score. But from what I've seen on the social media channels, is that the Canadian guys have been, taking it on the chin and enjoying it as much as they can. They actually joked that they stopped in Istanbul because Mason Flesh insisted on going to one of those hair transplant clinics, which I
I
found
thought
kind of funny.
I thought you were going to say that maybe like a kebab shop you heard about.
Ah. But yeah, and from what I've seen, they've been able to get the coach from Batumi back to Tbilisi, fly to Istanbul, and have flown straight to Porto, and they are now in Portugal and actually on schedule, so they should be all ready to go for their game against Portugal to close out the tour. And if you want to be watching that game, that will be available on TSN Plus. It's going to be this Saturday, kickoff at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 8 a.m. Pacific Time.
This is probably their most winnable game on the tour. And if they
Mm,
win this, I would actually still say this tour could be categorized as a success.
yeah, I agree with you on that. But the big news that has come out over the past couple of days is that World Rugby have announced the Nations Cup. This is going to be the tier below the new Nations Championship, and it is set to run in 2026 for the first time, and then even numbered years to avoid clashing with the Rugby World Cup and the British and Lions Tour. It's been announced that there are going to be two pools. The pool one is going to be Europe, Africa, and Asia, and includes the teams of Spain, Portugal, Romania, Georgia, Zimbabwe, and Hong Kong, China. And in pool two, it will be the Americas and the Pacific. So that is Canada, the USA, Chile, Uruguay, Tonga, and the final qualified nation for the Men's Rugby World Cup in 2027, which is Samoa. And the format is as follows. Each team will face all six members of the opposite pool. They'll play three games in July and another three in November. So this means that Canada is guaranteed to face Spain, Portugal, Romania, Georgia, Zimbabwe, and Hong Kong, China in 2026, and three of those games will be held in Canada, is the hope. Um, yeah, it's the way it's all been formatted together. It seems as though it's going to be Europe versus the Americas. And the reason why I say it like that is because Zimbabwe and Hong Kong, China are probably going to be playing those games at neutral venues to ensure the biggest turnout available for those games. Um, Likewise, it may be the case that Tonga and Samoa will play their games at neutral venues, most likely in the USA, again to maximize ticket revenue and things like that. And so that would mean that if Tonga and Samoa are based in the United States, it allows a reduction of travel time for those European teams as well as Zimbabwe and Hong Kong, China, so they can play in close proximity. Canada would likely be playing in Canada as well. The proximity not as great, but one team, well, sorry, two teams will probably have to make the trek from North America to South America. And if all the November games are going to be held in Europe, that means Zimbabwe and Hong Kong, China will play in Europe at a neutral venue. This is all yet to be determined. To be honest, they only announced this on Monday, and because Samoa and Belgium's game wasn't until today, they didn't even have full confirmation of which teams would be playing. So this is all pretty new. They also said that the top team of each pool will become that pool's champions. So unlike the Nations Championship, there is not going to be any playoff finals for the Nations Cup, which I'm, a bit miffed about, but if it doesn't happen in 2026, I can see there being a push for it in 2028. Jeff, what did you make of this announcement?
Well, I'm glad to see Canada's getting six guaranteed games. And to be honest, I generally speaking like the teams that they're going to up against.
Mm,
There's a couple, I think, very winnable games there. There's going to be a couple really hard-fought games and the games that are going to be a real test for Canada's depth and their ability to step up. So generally speaking, I mean, the more games they get guaranteed, the better. And I hope they do get to host three games in Canada. And
mm,
maybe, okay, I can allow Toronto maybe to have a game.
mm. I
Yeah.
would like that too. That would be pretty good for me. But if you take into account not only the Nations Cup, but the Pacific Nations Cup as well, this guarantees that Canada will have at least nine games in even numbered years, which
That
is,
was going to be my follow-up question was is the
yeah,
PM like is there going to be games in the spring like that February March window?
I'm not sure about then. I think that the Pacific Nations Cup is probably going to still align with the Rugby Championship. The Nations Cup is meant to align with the July international window and the November international window. So there is that. So while the Six Nations are going on, there's no competition for Canada at the moment, unfortunately. That said, with all the Canadians out of MLR, maybe there an agreement can be made with Uruguay and Chile to play a couple of games during the Six Nations international window. Even if that means organizing a flight down to South America and just playing a couple of games just to get a bit of experience under their belt. Yeah, and it'll be summer then, so it'll be nice and warm, a nice change instead of the snowy foothills of Canada, I guess. But yeah, I think that should definitely be an option to look into. Because and otherwise, the only likelihood you have of facing Chile and Uruguay at the moment seems that in the Men's Rugby World Cup, and you don't really want to wait every 4 years to play that close availability of opposition. So, you know what, I'll leave that up to the Canada board, Rugby Americas North and Sud America Rugby to iron that out. But if you're listening, and I know they are, um, set up a few games. You know, even have Canada take on either Brazil or Paraguay. I think that'll be fun. It can also be a Rugby Championship of the Americas. You know what? I'll work on the name at another time. But yeah, a Rugby Championship with the Americas in the Six Nations window. I'm getting a sense of deja vu, actually. Anyway, and it's past. Right. Okay, we're gonna pay attention to events that have been going on back home because it has been the Canadian University Men's Rugby Championship this past week, and we have our champions for the first time. The Guelph Gryphons have won the Canadian University Men's Rugby Championship. They beat the hosts and the defending champions, ETS, 18-13 in the final. I was able to watch this game while it was going on, and this was a super tense encounter. For those of you who were unable to watch, because of this short turnaround of fixtures, these games were only 60 minutes long, so each half was 30 minutes. So, you have to score quickly. You don't get the extra 10 minutes a half to see if you have any respite. And Guelph were able to take the lead. They were able to get the first try on the board. But soon enough, towards the end, ETS was able to catch up. They were able to close the gap. It was, as you can tell from the score, within a try to tie it with a conversion. ETS could have won. But Guelph's defense held out, and ultimately they lifted the MacTier Cup for the first time in their history. They've made the finals back in 2023, I believe, and they've made the semifinals in 22. So, congratulations to all the guys on those teams, including a few former Arrows in Kobe Faust and Liam Bowman. And yeah, I think this was just a fantastic game. I also saw Sam Malcolm handing out a couple of the Player of the Match awards, and I saw Faust picking one up, and they embraced when that was going on. So that was pretty cool. So the final rankings has Guelph as number one, ETS third. The bronze goes to UBC, who beat UVic in fourth. In the consolation final, Queens beat the University de Montreal, and Dalhousie beat UBC Okanagan in the seventh place final. Jeff, were you able to watch any of these games at all?
Unfortunately, no, I wasn't, but congrats to Guelph on winning and congrats to ETS on a great tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll be looking forward to the next round of the Canadian University Men's Rugby Championship in 2026. Now, we've been talking a lot about 15s rugby. Let's move on to sevens. No, the sevens series has not returned just yet, but the Canadian men are taking part in a competition this weekend, and that is the Rugby America North Sevens. And the winner of this competition will advance to the Sevens Division 3 to then aim to win that to get into the Challenger Series. And if they win high enough in the Challenger Series, they can enter the World Championship phase of the Seven Series. But before they can do all that, they have to start at the beginning, which is a very good place to start, and that is with the Rugby American North Sevens. The decision for head coach is still ongoing for the men's sevens. So Christian Esterhuizen is the interim sevens head coach at the moment. They have a pretty good squad, and it was also announced in the press release from Rugby Canada that Lockie Kratz has returned following his knee injury at the start of 2024. So that's great to see him. Jeff, we've seen from last year that Canada is pretty much the shining star of the Rugby American North Sevens. I mean, they had straight victories, didn't even concede a try in any of their games. So this just seems, for lack of better terms, a formality for Canada to aim to get back into the Challenger Series. But what do you think is going to be like the biggest thing that they have to focus on in this series?
Well, to be honest, you just kind of touched on it. It's actually staying mentally sharp
Mm.
because everyone's going to say they're the favorites, they should win it, possibly without giving up a try. Don't get lazy. Don't get lazy. Stay focused, stay connected on defense and on offense, and I'll just hope that no injuries for any of the players on and any team, to be honest. But yeah.
Yeah, that is very true, and yeah, we are hoping that Canada do finish first and can advance to the Division Three series, and then hopefully on to the Challenger Series. And hopefully, World Rugby doesn't change the format of sevens at the last minute again, like they did earlier this year. But if you are looking to watch the RAN sevens, you can do so on rugbypass.tv. And that will begin this weekend. Likewise, if you want to catch the Canada game against Portugal, as we said, that'll be on TSN Plus. And if you want to catch any of the alternation series between the Tier 1 nations, you can do so on DAZN. And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to check out more, as well as our written pieces on our website, therougerugby.ca. You can also find us on Spotify and YouTube at The Rouge Rugby. We're also available on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, and Blue Sky, all at The Rouge Rugby. Jeff, where can people find you on social media?
You can find me on X at WP Rugby Jeff.
And you can find me across social media at Hardman, spelled H4RDMAN. Well, Jeff, that's where we're going to end this episode. Thank you for joining me, and thank you all for joining us for another episode of the Rouge Rugby podcast, where we talk about real Canadian rugby. We hope you can join us again next time.